There is nothing harder than getting out of the house with a newborn baby, except maybe a newborn and a toddler. If I hadn't been a part of the program with a nurse visiting me at home, I would have really struggled. I still have days where I'm struggling, but I'm still able to hang on to those conversations with that nurse. And if I'm still thinking about it 10 years later, that's made a massive impact in my life. I'm Kaya Rainbird. I am a mother of 3 children and I live here in northern Tasmania.
MECSH is a program that starts ideally in pregnancy, so we try to get families as soon as we can. And it's based on this concept of supporting them to parent effectively despite. These families have got lots going on. Poverty, history of mental health issues, they're living in difficult communities. And we can't change those things. What we can do is build the resilience of the family and the children to live their lives effectively. And that nurse is going to be with them for 2 or 3 years. And we know that makes the family feel really safe to be able to say what's really going on for them.
So when I was 14, I went into a foster care environment. I owe the rest of my life to that time. They helped me understand who I was as a person. Up until that point, I'd experienced so much trauma, so much abuse, neglect, you name it, it was probably there. I was pregnant with my second child. At the appointment where I was actually invited to join up, I was planning to book in a caesarean because I was so anxious about having another natural delivery where things could go wrong, like they had with my first. So I was in a stable environment, stable marriage, already had a child, but still suffering a very common illness of postnatal depression and postnatal anxiety.
So when we find out from the routine interaction that our health services have with families that this is a family that's doing it tough, then the program's offered. And MECSH doesn't care what sort of adversity. So there's other programs that just take first-time teenage mothers, for example. It's there for every family who's doing it tough. And when you think about families who are feeling scared that if they ask for help, someone might stigmatise them, might think they're unfit parents, these are families that are not going to ask for help. They don't need to ask.
So I would have been about 34 weeks pregnant. It was really the only peace and quiet you get is when you're sitting in the waiting room. I think I was sitting there reading and someone with a clipboard just said, "Hey, are you interested in this project?" And when I sort of heard more about it, immediately what sparked my interest was health appointments at home.
It may be that what we found out that's sort of triggered us knowing that this is a family that needs support might be some surface issue, like trouble breastfeeding, for example. But when we start to work with them, the problem is underneath. It's a mental health issue, it's a lack of support, it's feeling isolated. And so over time, we actually get to those underlying issues and solve the real problems.
So Hector, he was born in respiratory distress. He needed resuscitating. He was born with a hole in his lung. I had a very severe postpartum hemorrhage as well, and so we were separated for the first 12 hours. He was in the NICU on a breathing machine. It was pretty traumatic for the both of us. Having that right-at-home nurse coming to our home, that was incredible. If he was crying, he would quite often go a little bit blue. And having that reassurance from the nurse that he's okay, look, his colour's pinking up again when he stops crying, and that reassurance was exactly what we needed. When you nearly lose a baby at birth, everything is a worry. And so she would see his weight drop off the graphs and And I said, I'm really worried about him. And she said something that stuck with me. She said, it could be something, or it could just be Hector. And it really helped me look at things differently. He could be a baby that doesn't like to sleep during the day. He could be a baby that feeds better on one side than the other. She'd see me in my pyjamas, she'd see me breastfeed a newborn baby. I think I was able to have a bond with her in a way where I could take her advice, and she was able to give me that advice based on what she was seeing in my home. There were always times when I would say to her, oh, do you think this is worth the GP? And she said, oh, you know, that's a viral rash. It's likely he's picked up the same cold that you have, and you can go to the GP, but he'll probably tell you it's a virus. There was another time when he had pretty bad nappy rash, and she said, yeah, I think this one might need an ointment. Probably go to the GP for that one. I probably would have spent a lot of time at the emergency room worried about him. There were a lot of times when I was at home with the two children on my own, and having another adult to talk to was great. I think my postnatal depression would have been a lot more severe if it wasn't picked up as early as it was. She was definitely encouraging me to go to mothers groups, play groups. She even told me of one which I didn't realise, but it was just up the road from our house. It was only a few hundred metres walk.
It's about meshing families and connecting families in with the community. If they're going to parent well despite, they need to find the resources and supports within their community so that when the nurse finishes, that actually the nurse is redundant because this family's connected.
Lynn Kemp's MECSH program is a homegrown success story. It's developed by an Australian nurse, and now it's rolled out around the world. It is operating in the United Kingdom, in the United States, in South Korea. It's all over the place. One of the strengths of MECSH is that it is responsive to local communities. We know that if you want to achieve stronger communities, you need to work with the community's own strengths and assets and motivations. And MECSH is absolutely in line with that approach.
And so actually MECSH is known by different names everywhere you go. So for example, in the trial in Victoria and Tasmania, and now as we implement it in Brisbane, it's known as Right at Home. In southwest Sydney with the Aboriginal community, it's known as Bulindidi Gudiga. In Vermont, it's known as Strong Families, Strong Children.
And when you take that localised approach and you combine it with the strong evidence base that we've been able to create through the randomised controlled trial and the other work that we're doing, for example, in the Northern Territory with the Menzies School of Health Research, then that gives you a really worthwhile and safe investment. One of ARACY's guiding principles is that we follow the evidence and we advocate for the evidence even when it's unpopular. There's no such thing as a silver bullet in social issues, but sustained nurse home visiting is pretty much close as you're going to get to a silver bullet. It is one of the most powerful ways that we can support child development and get these other benefits for the adults in a child's life and for the communities that those children and adults live in. Yes, it is more expensive than usual care, but the return on investment for a relatively small upfront cost per family, the return on investment's extraordinary.
Hector is just beautiful. He's 10, he's in grade 4. He loves to play tennis. He loves Lego. He's extremely bright. He has a diagnosis of giftedness as well as autism and ADHD. So we've got our work cut out for him. He finally sleeps through the night. It took us a while, it took us a long time, but he's just amazing. The health of my son, and in fact our whole family, is a testament to that program. I still have days where I'm struggling. I'm now a single mum. I've got 3 kids. I'm trying to balance work and netball and dancing and tennis and everything with school. But I'm still able to hang on to those conversations with that nurse. And if I'm still thinking about it 10 years later, that's made a massive impact in my life. And to the nurses, amazing. You've got no idea just how much of an influence you have. Like, they're incredible.